Where's that darn karate Jew? They're making us rabbinists look horrible. Shalom and welcome to another exciting edition of Torah Watchman Show LLC. Hosted by yours only and your humblest and simplest of Jews, this karate Jew, Reb ben-Emmett, the rabbi of the Fatah Synagogue of Uganda. I hope everyone's been well. God bless all of you. I have a very important, very critical documentary to do for you for this video sequence for this publishing period. The title of this Torah Watchman Show edition is The Differences Between Hamas versus Fatah, namely the two differentiated primary, I would say, Islamic Muslim movements, political parties in Eretz Israel. There is so much ignorance in the United States over the word Palestine, Palestinians, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And the people just woke up and said, who is this group called Hamas? Wow. And, it took us for years to digest, consume the messaging behind ISIS. Even before that, Al-Qaeda, no one knew who was Al-Qaeda until our 9/11, their night time, the horrific time. We fought a 20-year war literally in Afghanistan in targeting Al-Qaeda and their Taliban contributors there. There needs to be a moment of awakening among the Jewish people who are in the diaspora, many by choice, many because they have it planned out properly while they're not Israel. That's up to them. It's not for me to judge. I judge myself, first of all, because I'm waiting for my retirement benefits to kick in. But anyway, I was looking over the statistics before I get into the main topic area here tonight. There is an overwhelming support for the political establishment led by Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Sarah Biden and the crew that's in the administration poultice right now by Jews, yes, Democrat Jews, namely, very liberal politically Jews, even though they call themselves Orthodox. They still, if Biden would run for president again in 2024, more than likely they would vote for him overwhelmingly more than Donald J. Trump or any Republican on the opposite end of the conservative spectrum, per se. Why is this? Even after the Hamas-led Holocaust against our people, Eretz Israel, 1,400 people murdered, Jews, mostly civilian, I'm talking about women and children and tiny babies, innocent children, hunted down and butchered, hiding in the darkness of their basements. I will not go into the gory details. And many people don't understand the nature of the Palestinian state. And I have Christians ask me this all the time ad nauseum. Why can't the Jews find a home elsewhere where there's not so many political conflicts, like in the land of Israel today? Why did the Jews go somewhere else? Well, we tried that, remember? We were exiled. We were exiled through the diaspora since 2,000 years ago, at least, at the very least. And even before that. We have been exiled and then chased down by the pogroms of the Soviet Union, the Leninsky Marxism of that day, and then later Stalin, which was equal in every respect as Hitler's for his butchering Jews. Then you had the Roman Catholics that could not tolerate any Jews whatsoever in the country of Spain in 1492. We were exiled there. And then in England, in Anglo-Saxon England, even by the year 1600, and shortly after that, the King James Bible was published around 1609 or so. There was not one single Jew, on any listed census at least, in England and Great Britain, because of Christian intolerance against the Jewish people. I'm not going there anymore. I'm just giving you some context here, okay? Now we have to deal with the reality of our past decisions that's led to the inevitable secret event that's ended in a major Middle East conflict, the Hamas surprise attack on August 7th of 2023. How did it happen? And why so many people throughout the world hate the Jews? And who is this party, the Fatah party? Who is that? Who is Hamas? Are they the same thing? How do they differ? Now, I went to a non-biased news outlet, not Breitbart News, as some people criticize me for supporting a neo-Nazi group. I don't know why they call it that, because Mr. Breitbart was adopted and raised by an Orthodox Jewish family before he died in an accident. But anyway, Al Jazeera News, I started going to their website because they had more accurate information, less biased information about the Ukrainian war. And I thought it was very interesting in the dichotomy of truths and how they differentiated different events and different war events and casualties and things of that nature, who was winning over a community across whatever boundary. I thought it was interesting what Al Jazeera said versus Fox News. Sometimes it was polar opposite. And everyone knows there's Al Jazeera. They do not like the Jewish people at all. They don't. In fact, they actually are heavily biased for Hamas Palestinians and Fatah Palestinians. Let us define terms first. When we say Fatah party, or when we say Hamas party, or Islamic Jihad, we're talking about Palestinians, okay? Please check the video on Torah Watchman on my channel, YouTube channel, and go there. What is Palestine, for more details about the history of the Palestinian state. I will not cover that in here because we have limited bandwidth. Please stay with me. I could just give you a diatribe of my personal biased opinions about the whole landscape of possible arguments governing the Fatah party, Hamas party, and where it is in America that we have members within the House of Representatives in Congress that actually are proud supporters of Hamas, who actually have links that the FBI has tracked in the past with the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. Hamas is a split-off group from the Muslim Brotherhood. They're both international terrorist organizations. But what is their ideology? Hamas is Islamist, of course. Fatah is secular Islamist, I would say. Islamist, how you define secular, the difference between secular and Islamist is simply that one is more orthodox in their teachings, more observant. In other words, they on Ramadan, they're always there in prayer for that week of 7 days of Ramadan on the Hajj, and they're more observant in prayer and in practice, and the halal as far as the way that they live their life decision according to the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad, their prophet. Of course, Fatah is more secular. In other words, they are proud Arab Muslims, or say Palestinian Arab Muslims, but by ethnicity per se, a creed, or just generational rituals and traditions and everything else. And Jews pride ourselves in our tradition, ritualism as well. But anyway, they don't necessarily are as observant as their brothers with the Hamas movement. At the very beginnings between Hamas and Fatah, they were very, very different. And I'll cover that in a moment. Now we get into strategy toward Israel, because really that is the devil in the details, right? Hamas is for armed resistance at all and any cost. And I'm talking about women and children dying as human hostages. As far as targets, they use Palestinians as shields around their military operations, like in hospitals and schools. The Palestinian civilians, according to Hamas ideology, is they are expendable for the needs of the greater large, the greater opportunity. Why? To destroy Israel. So Hamas wants to destroy the nation of Eretz Israel that was founded again in 1948. They don't want to compromise with the Jews. They don't want a Palestinian state divided up in Eretz Israel. They want to completely wipe out all the Jewish population, all 9 million of us in Israel, and literally from the river to the sea, drive us out and they will be free. Those same chants were echoed in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, just this past weekend. In fact, since the war started, you've been hearing that. Now, the Fatah party you would think is more reasonable, more moderate, right? In fact, the United States, over a period of time, I say since at least 1967, 1973, 1994, they've worked exclusively with the Fatah party. When you hear Fatah party, you think about the Palestinian Liberation Organization. I want you to focus on the middle word, liberation. What do they want to be liberated from? Do they want to be liberated from each other? Do they want to be liberated from Hamas? Do they want to be liberated from what? It's the Jewish people. The Jewish people always get in the way in their own Jewish nation that they have won by war and recognized by the international United Nations and international law in 1948 at the very least, to have the benefits of having their own independent state along with the Palestinians. Okay? But that was not good enough. In 1948, we had many, many wars. The Arabs tried to destroy us and kill us, and we won those conflicts leading up to 1967 when we took over and unified all of Jerusalem. But Fatah, they are slick suit like there's politicians, per se, and they will and deal. They don't wear all the terrorist garb and the scarves and everything else and the garments of war. Yasser Arafat, Egyptian-born Yasser Arafat, who was the first president actually appointed, self-appointed, not by the people, but with the Fatah party, and he started the Palestinian Liberation Organization and invented his own flag by taking the star off the Jordanian flag and making it his own Palestinian flag, declared an independent Palestinian state by 1964, essentially. But they do negotiate, in other words, primarily with the United States, and then the Arab nations as well, that they want funds for their people. They want humanitarian funds. They want people want to eat, right? They want to have jobs and things of that nature. Unemployment has not been very good among the Palestinian people in in Samaria, aka West Bank, for quite some period of time. Did you know that there was a political election between 2005 and 2007 in which the PLO, or the Fatah party, and I use them together interchangeably, they were voted out of office, per se, in favoring Hamas. That's right. 84%, I believe, more or less, of Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip, when George Walker Bush and others, and Rabin and others in Israel, kicked the Jewish communities that are out there for generations, closed the doors of their synagogue, closed all their yeshivas, kicked the Jews out of Gaza Strip for an experiment of land for peace. Well, the Palestinians by 2007 did not want a secular, more moderate political party for their ruling government, like I say Yasser Arafat or Mahmoud Abbas. They wanted Hamas. They wanted a military-controlled government that was very orthodox in their thinking as far as the interpretation of Quran, and not just the Quran, but the thousands of other commentaries. Some of them are more radical than others, depending on Sunni or Shia ideology. And I won't get into all of that. The objectives are simple. Hamas does not recognize Israel's existence whatsoever. Do not recognize there was ever a Holocaust. And if there was a Holocaust indeed, that Hitler was right with the final solution in eradicating the Jews. And they actually have said in their manifesto, essentially, they want to continue what Hitler failed to do, is to exterminate the Jewish people completely. They want to completely take over Eretz Israel as of today and make it the state of Palestine, something that's never existed in history at all. Check out my video about what is Palestine for more details on that. And the fact that they declared, along with the PLO, a Palestinian state in 1967. But again, there were borders that were in dispute between Palestinians and Israeli government and military officials for the Fatah party to negotiate for land rights and water rights and things of that nature. But Hamas does not even recognize that the Jews have a right to exist at all in the land of Eretz Israel. And that's how they differ so much. Fatah party, in conclusion, recognizes the state of Israel at least up until 1967. In fact, they want us to go back to pre-1967 state lines. The United Nations drew lines in the sand, literally around swamps and mountains and things like that nature. Essentially, they divided up Jerusalem between west and east. In other words, the Kotel Wall belonged to Muslims. All the Jewish holy sites, which is 5 in Eretz Israel, belong to the Muslims. As far as all of the West Bank would belong to the Muslims, and all of Gaza Strip belong to Muslims. And you try, as a military commander, you try to defend territory like that. It's indefensible. You cannot defend territory like that. Plus, you have enemies. Don't forget about Syria and Assad in the Golan Heights, and we won the Golan Heights as well, because it was a military mountainous area, a plateau of attack for Lebanon, Hezbollah, guerrillas, and Syrian soldiers, etc., etc. I have a lot to talk about. Let me try to break out the details here. So we have two competing political groups of people. The people are Palestinians, okay? And they both look at a Palestinian state a little bit different. One that you can negotiate for land for peace, per se. And then another party that's completely against any kind of peace agreement. And that's why, the president of the United States today, it's ludicrous for him to say he wants a ceasefire between the battle that's ongoing right now as I speak, between Hamas and Israel, because we don't recognize Hamas as any kind of legally governing government body. They are not aligned military combatants, just like Al-Qaeda, they don't recognize. In fact, Israel's official policy on Palestine, we don't recognize the state of Palestine as a international recognized state or nation. We do not recognize that. We don't. Because it's open to heated debate and contentious arguments and war and conflict. You literally have Muslims killing Muslims over land rights today. I mean, if there are any Palestinians in Gaza Strip today that want to negotiate with Israel for peace, if they want to surrender, if they want to give up information about the hostages, they have a death sentence on them. They have a bullseye target on their back, and many Hamas commanders have killed their own people to shut them up in Gaza Strip. If you don't believe me, please research this. Just go to Google or Yahoo, and you'll find out the results, or go to Al Jazeera for information. Most of my content tonight is from Al Jazeera. Now, forgive me for my weak use of the Arabic language. I may mispronounce a few words incorrectly. And also some of the messaging here, if you're a Jew, is overtly anti-Semitic. But maybe that's the point I'm trying to make. Fatah is a reverse acronym, and I did not know this, known as Harakat al-Tahrir al-Palestina, or Palestinian National Liberation Movement in Arabic. That's a big word, right? The word Fatah means to conquer. Interesting? So you have a secular group of Palestinian Arabs, primarily Jordanians or Syrian, and they claim to want to negotiate. They claim they're secular, but the word Fatah means to conquer? What are they conquering? If they want to negotiate, why does the word mean conquer? The devil is always in the details, and it's a definition of these words. I hope my American liberal brothers and Jews in America is paying attention to this, okay? This is their words and their messaging, not this Jews, okay? So the secular movement was founded in Kuwait, I did not know that, in the late 1950s by the diaspora Palestinians after the 1948 Nakba. Nakba, you've heard that word quite a bit. In other words, when the United Nations, when the United Nations composed many different nations, at that time, 1948, used to be known as the League of Nations. The United Nations voted, I guess, the majority ruled for an Israeli state to exist in the land of Palestine, per se, okay? The Palestinian territory that was not governed by anyone. It's like the Wild West before 1948, essentially was, okay? When the Ottomans left, it was a mess, okay? It was a British colony before that, and I'll get into a lot of details. But in 1948, the land that was, I'm trying to say partition, you hear about DMZ, like between North Korea and South Korea, the DMZ there, the Palestinians had to leave their homes, supposedly, and go to the area that was partitioned for them. And they called that a Nakba, or an ethnic cleansing of Palestine by the Zionist movement, aiming to create a Jewish modern state in historic Palestine. Then let me quantify what it said here. Historic Palestine. The history of Palestine goes back to about 1964, if you want to be honest. This is when Yasser Arafat declared an independent Palestinian state. Please check out my video, What is Palestine? Under the Torah Watchman show, Rev Yair ben-Emmett, for more details about that, okay? So historic Palestine goes back, according to their messaging, 1964. Okay? Show me some archaeological digs, some relics, some evidence, some coinage, ancient pottery with the ancient Palestinian language and all this. And I will do a new video for retraction and apologize humbly to my Muslim brothers and sisters out there, okay? But show me the scientific evidence that there was such a thing as historic Palestine, okay? Before 1964, okay? Of course, the Zionist movement, they're talking about the movement led initially by Theodor Herzl and the 1917 time frame, okay? Leading up to the foundation of the Zionist Israeli state in 1948, and those were mostly formed by secular Jews, not observant Torah-centered Jews. Get that out quickly. So Fatah was founded by several people, most notably the late president of the Palestinian Authority, Yasser Arafat. I already talked about him. He was someone who got a group of Palestinians, per se, or disenfranchised Arabs that did not have any place really to call home or any kind of governance at all over them and no kind of civil authority. So he got together that mob, that paramilitary military force, went to Jordan and tried to overthrow that government and raise the flag of the Palestinian state there and take over Jordan's government and turn it into Palestine. Okay? That's why many Jews and some Arabs, honest Arabs, say, well, Palestine is really Jordan. Well, that's what Yasser Arafat believed. But he had problems pronouncing the word of Palestine because the word Palestine is not an Arabic word. It's actually Latin. It's actually Latin. It was invented and created by the Romans. Okay? It really is. There's no P in Arabic. Okay? I'm not going to go any more in that. So there was other leaders, aides, Khalil al-Watzer and Salah Khalaf and Mahmoud Abbas. Most people know Mahmoud Abbas, and I promise you, he spent more money on his suit compared to mine. Okay? I heard it's made out of silk. It's quite expensive, and lives in $1 million mansion, while so many of these Palestinian people are starving and don't have enough food on the plate. But he lives in a mansion, I think in Ramallah in West Bank. Okay? And he's the current recognized PLO chairman or presidente of all the Palestinians that are not in Gaza Strip. Let's put it that way, okay? So the movement was premised, okay, as a prerequisite on the armed struggle against Israel to liberate historic Palestine. You hear this all the time, historic Palestine, okay? Again, quickly, Mahmoud Abbas and others, Yasser Arafat said that the Palestinians in his time actually originated from the Canaanites. And they actually originated from the Philistines. And they said all of this without any kind of proof. That's what they said. I mean, every city is built upon another city. I mean, even Jerusalem today, which is built by the Roman Empire and King Herod I, literally, before it was ruined and burned to the ground several times, it's built on the remains of King Solomon's old and King David's old Jerusalem, which is much smaller, and that is built on top of the Hittite city of Salem, going back 4,000 years. And there's no Palestinian state or relics or palaces or thrones or temples or anything anywhere in those layers, the strata of history. It's just not. Okay. That is historic Palestine. Okay. So the main military wing of the group, Al-Asfa, or the Storm, Al-Asfa fighters were based in several Arab countries as well in the West Bank and Gaza. Incidentally, even if Israel eradicates every single Hamas military commander, every single Hamas soldier, and every single Hamas contributor in the Gaza Strip, there still is a hierarchy of Hamas leadership in Qatar. Yeah. I mean, that's where they are. And in Qatar, they're trying to negotiate a ceasefire to help out Hamas. Go figure. So the group's armed struggle against Israel's occupation began in 1965. Most of its armed operations were carried out from Jordan and Lebanon. I described the unsuccessful coup by Yasser Arafat, Egyptian-born Yasser Arafat. He was not born Palestinian, per se. His father was, I guess. So that's talking about that coup and that so-called Nakba that created their own misery by trying to overthrow of a government through armed conflict. Okay? So under Yasser Arafat, and after 1967, the Arab-Israeli War, Fatah became the dominant political party in the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Yes, you actually have Palestinians that went to the ballot boxes and voted, okay? And actually the United States showed respect, believe it or not, in Gaza Strip for the Palestinians that voted in a democratic, not Jeffersonian election process, but voted at the ballot boxes there for Hamas to be their ruling government twice, okay, twice. Remember, 84% of all Palestinians living in Gaza Strip voted for Hamas twice. And by the way, 74% of all Palestinians in Eretz Israel, I'm talking about West Bank and Gaza Strip combined and other areas, prefer Hamas, have a favorable opinion of Hamas over Fatah. In fact, if there was a political election today in the West Bank between Mahmoud Abbas, the Fatah party, or Hamas, the Palestinians would vote overwhelmingly for Hamas. So what does that tell you where we're going here, okay? So the PLO was created in 1964 with a goal to liberate Palestine, hence PLO, and today acts as a representative of the Palestinian people at the United Nations. So actually, Mahmoud Abbas and Yasser Arafat before him, Yasser Arafat actually was given the red carpet treatment in the United States by prior U.S. presidents, right? When he wasn't even elected by the Palestinian people to be their president, he was appointed himself and his henchmen appointed him. Same thing with Mahmoud Abbas. He was never elected through any type of Democratic Party. Now, the Fatah party is in control of West Bank because the Palestinians voted for the Fatah party, but as far as the nomination of a president, that was his choice. He accepted it gleefully for himself. Okay? Very humble man, right? So after being pushed out of Jordan and Lebanon, and we're talking about in the 1970s, 1980s, very bloody conflict. I think they call that the Black September or something like that. I did a video about that. Okay, the Arabs, in the quote, the Arabs basically helped in forcing Fatah to agree on taking a diplomatic route after it was pushed out of Beirut. Arabs, I'm talking about the Arab Emirates, other Arab countries outside of Eretz Israel, okay? Nashat Aktash, a West Bank-based political analyst, told Al Jazeera News. A lot of these things I've never read before, never knew until I read this article. And I hope it's educational for you too, because they don't teach us in school. They don't teach us in political science, to my knowledge. In the 1990s, Fatah led PLO officially and renounced armed resistance and backed United Nations Security Resolution. That was Resolution 242. We looked at. In other words, they thought they could get more pity out of the world consortium of government consensus through the United Nations, namely, people vote for different things, for different events and things going around the world, like ceasefires, trying to reach peace between warring, conflicting people, to avoid genocide, apartheid, all these things, the things in South Africa, all of this. You know, that's what supposedly they organized just before 1948 to prevent another Holocaust situation ever happened to any group of people, like the Armenian disaster at the hands of the Ottoman Turks. Don't want to go there. So they chose to use the United Nations as their weapon, a political weapon of choice there, to be able to get more political clout before these nations instead of taking a sword to their enemy in a battle, in a duel, or something like this, okay? That was very polar opposite of what Hamas was planning, okay? So in the 1990s, Fatah-led PLO, they moved forward with this idea, work with the UN, work with the US, work with Russia, work with China, other countries, work with the Arab states to get what you want in order to liberate the West Bank from Jewish presence, to form a Palestinian state, essentially with East Jerusalem as their capital. That's what is in their paperwork. The PLO then signed Oslo Accord, which led to the creation of Palestinian National Authority, Palestinian Authority, an interim self-governing body meant to lead an independent Palestinian state beginning approximately in 1973, okay? And moving forward in 1994, when that accord was actually implemented and taken away real estate and Jewish homes from the Jewish people and given it for land for peace deals through the PLO negotiation process to the Palestinians, okay? So Hamas now, let's get to Hamas, is an acronym for Hakat Wakma Islamiyah, or Islamic Resistance Movement. The word Hamas means zeal. Like Zionist could be zealous, right, and secular. But zeal, put Hamas and put Fatah together. Remember, Fatah means to conquer, and Hamas means zeal, so conquer with zeal, or zeal will conquer, if you brought them ever together, and that's where I'm heading toward. Please bear with me. The movement started as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and created a military wing. A Muslim Brotherhood, again, is of a long time, has been recognized as an international terrorist organization beginning with the nation of Egypt. Remember, they actually did a coup in Egypt and took over briefly the government there, and they started murdering Christians, murdering Jews, murdering anyone that was not radically for their form of government, okay? They invented the word Islamophobia, by the way. That's where the word came from. And of course, Hamas was a splinter group that was even more radical, more like ISIS, I would say, and their ideology, than the Muslim Brotherhood. Because in the Obama administration, he actually elected people, czars and other people, that were loosely affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. You would never say on your resume, applying for a job, that I'm working with Hamas. You just wouldn't. It's illegal in the U.S. Constitution to have any affiliation with an international terrorist organization. Okay, it's kind of interesting. Even though we have people in Congress that are very proud about that on their resume. Okay, so the main military wing group of Al-Asfa, or the Storm, Al-Asfa fighters were based in several Arab countries in the West Bank and Gaza. But what we get down to is how do they differ? Hamas defines itself as a Palestinian Islamic National Liberation Resistance Movement, resisting against Jewish illegal occupation. Even the UN, even the World Health Organization believe that all the land in Eretz Israel today is occupied territory by the Jews. They don't recognize that. If you go to Weather Channel, AccuWeather, they'll never say Jerusalem, Israel. They'll say Jerusalem, Jerusalem, or Jerusalem District. There's a lot of big technology companies that agree with this, that land is apartheid, that it's illegally occupied by the Jewish people, and it was stolen away from the Palestinian people that date their noble Palestinian heritage to 1964. Okay. So in 2017, Hamas issued a political document effectively claiming to break ties with the Muslim Brotherhood and said it would accept a Palestinian state in 1967 with borders with return of Palestinian refugees. That is very interesting. I did not know that. But, you know, that was a push and a bridge to work out all their differences they had in the past with the Fatah party, the Fatah Palestinian. You see where I'm going? Whatever propaganda it takes to get what you want, whether armed conflict or political dialogue, they will at least attempt it. Okay, they will at least attempt it. Though most of this stirred fears among the loyalists that was giving up the Palestinian cause, Hamas added the following clause to quantify what they said. Like Biden, he says one thing, and he has an administration official come and do double take and say, well, Biden didn't mean to say that. He actually said this. Okay, so they corrected. Here's a correction, in quote. Hamas rejects any alternative to the full and complete liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea, but considers the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state on 1967 borders, actually before 1967, because that's before they got the pants whipped off by the Zionist occupiers, okay, to be a form of national consensus. So what good is, we declare independence for this land here. This all has been disputed for hundreds and hundreds of years, not 1,000 years, a millennia, if the international bodies do not even recognize it. So they want whatever they want to say, or whatever they want to occupy for the people, they want to have international consensus. That is the desire, at least, okay? It's more politically correct. So Hamas entered Palestinian politics as a political party in 2005. So instead of all these ad hoc, random fighters, per se, they actually formed themselves in a coherent political party by 2005. And they won parliamentary election in 2006, beating Fatah in Gaza Strip. And that's where we are today with Hamas war. Okay? Civilians in Gaza have borne the brunt of the fighting. In the last Israeli assault on the Strip, this is according to Al Jazeera, 2,200 Palestinians were killed, including 500 children, over a span of 50 days. Of course, they do not talk about Hamas considering its civilians as dispensable individuals they could use for shielding their military apparatus, like putting missile batteries behind a hospital, or storing all their ammo and weapons and fuel for their military inside of a school, or that kind of thing. Targets internationally that usually off. You cannot strike a religious building, you cannot strike a school or hospital or health clinic, but Hamas owns all of those divisions of their government and the hierarchy structure there, and they will use them like human hostages, per se, for targets. They will accept the collateral damage and then blame the Israelis for targeting a hospital. That's how it works, okay? That's why if you have these high casualty rates, while Israel, the IDF, drops leaflets continually, Palestinians, we have no problem with you, only the government Hamas, please move south. Please get out of harm's way. Don't want anyone to die. Does Fatah or does Hamas drop leaflets over areas before they attack our civilian areas? I don't think it's happened. Why? I don't know. Ask them. So how do these objectives differ in the end? Okay, with the release of Hamas political document 2017, the objectives of the two parties are effectively the same. So the specifications, their constitution per se, are essentially were the same, at least in 2017. Creating a Palestinian on the borders of 1967 was the goal. The same thing Yasser Arafat tried and failed. Okay? So there's no value to the clause in which Hamas says it will not give up its historic Palestine. Said Atash, the political analyst here. Hamas has accepted a political compromise and they cannot go back on this. Okay? In 2017, they were actually working for political recognition of their government and the Gaza Strip. And that's why you hear about 500, 600 so-called foreign citizens, people with dual citizenship, like American citizens, being released out of Gaza Strip. Why are Americans in Gaza Strip? It's because of this dialogue between the U.S., as far as the U.S. giving so many hundreds of millions of dollars to schools, the United Nations giving money to the schools and hospitals, trying to build a new hospital, try to help with the depravity, employment situation of Palestinians there. They'll say whatever they need to get the money. Okay. So through this move, it stirred fears among the loyalists, again, the more zealous people of the Hamas movement. It was giving up the Palestinian cause. In other words, transforming all of Jerusalem to Al-Aqsa. Okay? So Hamas rejects any alternative to the full and complete liberation of Palestine from the river to sea. This is their main mantra today. You hear that in Washington, D.C. You consider establishing a sovereign state, Palestinian state in 1967, to be the desired goal, but it isn't. They may say what Mahmoud Abbas wants them to say for world consensus, but at the same time, they're planning for a massive Holocaust extinction event of Jewish people, which happened in October 6th of this year. Okay? So since 2007, Israel has launched 3 wars against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Why? Maybe because of 5,000, 6,000 missiles were launched by Hamas guerrillas into civilian targets throughout Israel. And if Palestinian civilians die because of the actions of their duly elected democratic government, why is it the fault of the Jewish people? That's for you to figure out, not for me to judge here. So there's no value in the clause which Hamas will not give up historical Palestine. So it has to be in their document. They will not give up historical Palestine. At the same time, they want group consensus. The same thing as what Fatah party is saying to Mahmoud Abbas through the PLO on the floor of the UN, United Nations Council. All Palestinians dream of liberating historic Palestine, but today they are working on a more realistic solution. How are we going to wipe out 9 million people, is what the Palestinians said, and allow the U.S. and other countries to agree with that? Well, it seems like today that everything they had wanted before to achieve by 2017 is falling to the side because of what happened, what Hamas decided to do on October 6th. Okay? It doesn't sound like they want to negotiate anything when you kill 1,400 civilians, primarily civilians, when you butcher and murder 40 babies. One live baby was put in an oven to cook in front of the mother. Other babies were beheaded, and horrible things done to corpses and bodies of Jewish women and men. I won't even get into that. That doesn't sound like an intent to negotiate anything for world consensus to the end, right? The strategy, the biggest difference in the two moments today is their attitude toward Israel. Again, Hamas has clung to using armed resistance. So you see a lot of pictures of them holding AK-47s, the old Soviet-era military rifle, okay? And swords clashing together in their symbols. I'll show you the icons here and as I discuss this video. They also, of course, gave Israel full control of the Palestinian economy, as well as civil and secure matters, and more than 60% of the West Bank or Samaria. You had A, B, C areas that were sectioned off after 1994. Okay? So any areas they had full control as far as territory, they could govern themselves, have their own police, have their own fire chief or school officials, things of that nature. Okay? So in March, protests erupted in the West Bank, and this article I would say is about 6 months old, more or less, 6 months old, and is about the armed conflict going on with Israeli forces in Ramallah after being arrested by the Palestinian Administration security personnel on allegation of planning an attack. And this was the activist Basil al-Araq. So Abbas, the PA president, regularly and publicly condemns any operations of armed resistance carried out by the Palestinians against Israelis. Again, this is what Al Jazeera says, what they claim, what Mahmoud Abbas says. However, they do not mention his pay-to-slave program. In other words, he encourages Palestinian activists to pick up a gun and shoot in the head a rabbi, or rape a girl, or stab someone in the back, or use a bomb or a brick to kill Jews, Jewish civilians. They don't say that. And then when that terrorist is taken out by the IDF, as they should, for self-defense, he pays the money from the taxes and for the money that Israel gives them, and other revenue from Arab governments and all, to pay the families of those terrorists and treat them as martyrs. That's what he does behind the scenes of saying he does not support armed conflict for its negotiation, okay? The PA does not believe in the legitimacy of Hamas arms, okay? So they're trying to cover for themselves, but secretly they have dialogue with them, okay, underneath the table. That means that the PA wants to end the resistance in Gaza, and Hamas refuses that. Then if Fatah accepts resistance, Israel will take measures against the PA. You see where I'm going. So Abdul Sattar Kazim, a Nablus-based political analyst, told Al Jazeera. A lot of these are quotes from Islamic journalists, not my opinion. Okay? So what they claim to want to do is a national unity program. Okay? I've already talked about the various differences of political strategy and goals. Fatah is a more or less confusing compared to Hamas, because Hamas actually has a constitution or charter of operation. In other words, they want the complete destruction of the Jewish state. They want to wipe out and exterminate all Jews and drive them from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. They said that very clearly. So when the Palestinians voted for them overwhelmingly twice, that's what those Palestinian civilians believe too. And these people are what government officials of the United States want to get humanitarian assistance to. Just consider that, okay? So there were a lot of families in Afghanistan among the Taliban and Al-Qaeda that unfortunately lost their lives as collateral damage because of the natural prosecution of combat and war. It's just happened. They get in a way, they embed themselves among military targets and things of that nature. And unfortunately, women and children lose their lives. And war is a horrific situation we should avoid at all costs. Okay? Fatah claims they want to avoid war and conflict with the Jewish people because they want more world consensus through the UN, through a bargaining, negotiating process. Okay? That's how they get all their funds. Now, again, Hamas, like the Muslim Brotherhood, uses grassroots activism to inform people on its ideology. They control Facebook. They control previous Twitter and now X. They control social media. Al Jazeera broadcasting. They have their own military broadcasting out of Lebanon. They are very good at their propaganda machine. They really are, more than Fatah. And they talk about their livelihood is tied to the existence of the PA. So it's yin and yang. If the Palestinian organization cannot exist through the Fatah party, then they can't exist for dual unity. That's what it's saying. It sounds logical, right? So in conclusion, many of those on the street who support Fatah do so from an emotional perspective, okay? For the slogans of the history of the movement, which they're proud of since when? 1964 or 1967, okay? Depending on what date you marked your Nakba, trying to say genocide by the Zionists against your people, okay? I'm being facetious, but I'm pointing out the history here, okay? On the other hand, Hamas has a completely different loyalty base. Ramallah-based activist Hazim Abu Hilal, yes, Hamas commanders are embedded throughout the Fatah party movement of the Palestinians throughout the A, B, C areas of the West Bank, okay? That's true. That is true. And Hamas has a different ideology, and they have people working to promote their ideas as opposed to Fatah, which uses money to secure followers, and sometimes money from Christian nations, which is kind of, blood money, according to Hamas. Today, if you ask university students, the majority of them do not know what Fatah's ideology is. The movement does not have clear principles. However, there are handshake agreements today between Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas leadership. At least the leadership still exists because many of the commanders have been taken out through the IDF since their secret attack on October 7th of this year. They have been shaking hands more than anything other than fighting with swords. So, in conclusion, based on analysis of all this information, other analysis of research up to the publication of this video, okay, Palestinian, whether you believe in the Palestinian people or not, whether you believe in the history of Palestine, if it was a legitimate country or not, Palestinians are essentially caught between Hamas and Fatah. But recent popular view who do you want to rule over your next political government when you go out to vote? They vote Hamas. They want the armed conflict. They want the Fatah. That's why you have signs in Washington, D.C. by these Palestinians, and the United States have allowed all these Palestinians into our country, refugees from Syria, refugees all over the world, causing mischief, at Israeli embassies, at U.S. embassies throughout the world. There are many countries throughout the world that have actually expelled their Israeli ambassadors in favor of Hamas, armed in Fatah. You know, they say that you have freedom of speech guaranteed in the United States, as our sovereign constitutional framers said it was true, and it is true. It holds up in the Supreme Court arguments every time. But when you say we want Fatah, that means armed violent conflict against anyone that doesn't hold true to their ideology. This is on the borderline of domestic terrorism, and if it has international funding for this group, it is international terrorism, and it's a form of Islamic terrorism that is growing at the grassroots level in the United States across 50 states, namely in the capital of our country. So what do you think about this? Okay? I don't think, my personal opinion, I don't think there's a huge difference anymore. It used to be a big difference between Fatah Party, Yasser Arafat, and Muslim Brotherhood. But there's no differences now. I mean, there are families and cousins, literally, between the West Bank, Fatah political party followers, members, they hold the card of Fatah Party membership, with people in the Gaza Strip. And of course, they have feelings for people that are losing their lives, and they mourn for them. Who would not mourn for their death of their loved ones? But who started this war? Who gave the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians to form their own state, to demonstrate before the world body as a whole, before the United Nations world consensus, that land for peace deals can be negotiated with peaceful outcomes. How many operations have the IDF launched in Gaza Strip to destroy missile batteries and everything else? Yes, there's a huge, I'm trying to say, blockade over Gaza Strip, disallowing Iran and North Korea and China and other nations to give them arms and weapons, but somehow they've been collecting weapons through arbitrary sources, like water pipes used for infrastructure items. They repurpose them into missiles. A lot of these missiles are homegrown, but that 500 of Hamas soldiers went to Iran and were trained for guerrilla warfare in support of this Hamas war in Israel today. Well, I learned something about reading this information. You have to take everything with a grain of salt now as year, but the devil in the details is how you define the terms, right? Well, Rabbi ben-Emmett signing out. I hope I didn't offend anyone out there. Listen, I love Palestinians. I love Muslims. I have nothing against you. As far as Semitic origins, we are cousins per se. If you're an Arab, even though only 15% of all Muslims are Arab descent. Are you amazed by that? So I'm related to at least those people, okay? I want everyone to get along. And I can say salam to my Arab brothers out there, my brothers and sisters. There's a lot of moderate Muslims here in where I live, okay? And even though I'm becoming worried if I take the metro or if I drive my vehicle back and forth to D.C. along the highway, I'm worried what the next person is going to do. If they're going to pull a gun out to me or my wife or child. I'm worrying about them attacking my home because I have an Israeli flag outside my home. I'm worried that because I look like this in public, I'm beginning to worry the first time in my life as an American citizen, and I fought for this country for 20 years and became 100% disabled as a Gulf War veteran because of it. I fought for our U.S. Constitution against enemies within and without. I have. And now to see our country in this state of affair, if you are a Jew in America, and we're coming up to 2024, in the last 4 years, are you happier, wealthier, better off than the 4 years before that? Can you honestly, justly say you want to support a president that prefers the Arab position of a two-state Palestinian solution in Israel than a president that wants to look at history and science and look at the results of bad fruit growing on bad trees, of Palestinian experiments like the Gaza Strip, and all that war and all those casualties and everything else, and say, Israel, let Israel decide its own destiny. And it's all the Jew asked for in Israel. Leave us alone. Let us prosecute our own wars. We will share with you our technology and medical science as a trade-off. If you want to give us funds for shared military technology, Israel has actually patched the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, and is actually using combat more than the United States has. And it's a better fighter craft now because of the investments that the military has made to the Israeli government. I could say about the Patriot missile system, it's called the Iron Dome now. It was a worthless system that was deployed with failed results in Hawaii, and now it works almost flawlessly. It's a win-win, right? And what does Jehovah say? They that bless Israel, I will bless. They that curse Israel, I will curse. And I guess I will close with that argument. Take care. Shalom Aleichem. Until I see you next time.